Drowse. She said something to me in one of my dreams, and I pictured the whole deal as she said it. She said, I was tripping with Arnold, and I was sitting on him the way I sit on you, and he said, I know how to make it last longer. Rub my face in that erotic little way you do. And she did, with one of those sultry slight smiles of hers, and I saw the goosebumps blister up on his face and neck, and somehow beneath his sideburns. Arnold is some guy that lives on her street who's friends with Javier, who lives next door to her. I don't know how or why she knows them. They're 22, and I'm like most people. I don't talk to my neighbors. Needless to say, that dream had me disturbed all morning, all day, and all week. I began to believe that it was real, that it had happened before she met me, when she was, say, 14. I don't know, perhaps it was a real event. Perhaps I have the power to predict the past. A note of interest. I've always had this strange feeling like I remember her from somewhere. Every so often, I see her make a certain glance with her hair tied back, and I know that I have seen that look before. Also, in my mind, my earliest memory of her comes from the split second that I first saw her. I was walking by and she glanced up at me amidst all her busyness, met my eyes and returned them. When I think in detail, I remember perfectly that she had blue eyes. She has brown eyes, but in that first instance I saw them as blue. She and I were walking on a path in a park, and I reached around her from behind, around the waist, and she looked sideways with an expression like the little girl with her permanent grin on, and she touched right into the cherry of the cigarette in my mouth. She jerked back quickly and shouted and kinda yelled at me with gray ashes on her temple. I remember things all the time, but not from where. Smells. Smells I'll catch somewhere have me remembering some speeding image from wherever. I don't know, but smells can get me twanged out proper. Sights. Things I have indeed seen, say only a short time ago, but I keep them like nostalgia. Simple pretty things, on her stomach on my bed, eyes in the eyes, giving me the sultry look. Nostalgia. Dropping her off in the daytime, she goes to get her mail, I handle the cul-de-sac, grinding away, honk the horn, look back, see her look up, pull her hair out of her eyes while smiling, all quickly, unaware of me being turned around, staring out the wrong windshield. A pretty little girl standing by her mailbox in the sun, shrinking from my driving down the street. Nostalgia. Nostalgia becomes unendurable. I work for the hospitals and see all sorts of human wonder. I was delivering to labor and deliveries, which I thought was a branch of my own department, transportation. Once inside the doors, I heard 3 different doctors say something about bleeding to 3 different wheelchaired women 3 different times. The signs on the walls all had something to do with gynecology, and I realized I was wrong. I was where babies come from. As I approached the desk that I was intended to deliver to, I walked past a door where I saw a curtain extended and heard 3 voices. One said, "Here come the shoulders." I set the big box down by the desk, and some evil thing asked me about its contents before hastily signing my clipboard. I told her it was a box, and that was that. She signed and sped off. On my way back to the service elevator, I walked past that same room a little slower. It was quiet. Then I heard the doctor say, "It's a boy," and the 3 voices were cheering. A rather lickety-split procedure. I listened a second more, then heard the baby start to cry, and that was all the confirmation I needed. My work was done there. So only after a few weeks, I had already witnessed, or at least overheard, a birth. At another hospital, the interesting one, in the stairwells, grating seals up the space between the handrails. I suppose if it wasn't there, the suicide cases on the 3rd floor would be tempted to take the path between them, down to the ground floor. One time, while cruising one of the dead hallways there, a security guard came running around the corner, yelling, "Excuse me, coming through." Feet plodding quickly, badge sailing above his shoulder. He hurdled a sofa in the lobby and bounded up the stairs to the 3rd floor. There's the eating disorders unit, always teeming with beautiful yet horribly gaunt young girls staring at me when I bring them their art supplies. You see it on TV, the anorexics are always beautiful. She's beautiful. When I'm in there, the feeling's almost nostalgic. Nostalgia becomes unendurable. On the last run of one of my weekday shifts, I was in a hospital about an hour away. I was done dropping off and picking up whatever it was I had to, and I was on the floor where the vending machines are. A real rinky-dink setup, out in the middle of nowhere, where the surgeons have tattoos and spiders fester in the central sterile supply, and a flea-itching alley cat sleeps under the trucks in the loading dock, and the patients wheeling out of elevators peek at you with one eye. I looked into one ward and saw a patient in her room with the door opened. The lights were off, and the room was only lit by the small light above the bed and the black and green medical monitors. I didn't see the whole patient, just what I suppose was the chest down under a sheet. The white sheet was moving with inhalation. So I stared a few moments without being seen. It was interesting to me. It was life being cradled. So that's my job. A lot of driving that I can't handle. See, I'm a dozer. Did you hear about the woman who claims to have stayed up without sleep for 6 months, then fell asleep on a talk show while promoting her book? I have a similar story. You wouldn't believe the percentage of my life that I've lived awake. I'm not saying it doesn't affect me. It affects me like holy hell. I don't know what my problem is. I veer and swerve and weave and stop short, and I'm a genuine failure at maintaining a lane. My side views skim the knuckle hair of old ladies out run walking, and I come to distances from where I can last remember being awake. To overcome all this, I've tried rainbows of caffeine pills, over-the-counter uppers, ginseng, and all forms of the venti mocha Valencia espresso, but I was quick to become immune, and don't even try to suggest 20-minute refresher naps, because I've attempted them too, and all they've done is turn into 3-day comas. After about 4 or 5 days of this partial alertness, the gray and wispy hallucinations jump in at the corners of my eyes, which doesn't affect well while driving. One time, I was using the company's '94 Ford Explorer on that stain of a highway known as Route 15. Route 15 with its blazing green ditch of a median, reaching basically to nothing but the Sparta Business District. Air conditioning on high and the stereo on high, blasting away some Led Zeppelin tune. I kept going under for lengthening amounts of time, and every 100 feet or so there were these metal stakes planted in the ground. The fear of veering off into one of these and tearing up the undercarriage was enough to refresh me here and there. Then I awoke to huge green walls on either side of me, and the violent jolting the Explorer took over the varied nooks and crannies. I cut the wheel and blew up to the shoulder where I stopped the car and hurriedly went through an inspection. In shock, I believe, I scanned over the dash, the climate control, sound system, fuel gauge, and trip log. Suddenly, I pictured myself at the helm of one of those highly decorated buses careening around the Himalayas, eyes popping open upon descent, knuckles stretching to white, lips pulling wide, and teeth clenching beyond the cracking point of enamel. And I began laughing and growing in decibels. And as a climax, I lurched out the window all the way to the waist and punched the air and shook my fist at all the Route 15 travelers screaming by. And I was singing praises like, "Ford, baby, Ford! Woohoo!" For no doubt it was Ford's suspension and handling that saved my life that day. I drove home nodding off again, swaying past the double yellow, as close as can be to the opposing side view mirrors. Waking every few moments or so to frightened horn honking and the sound of a new rattle in the transmission. I had a dream last night. Well, 2 in 1. In the first, we were somewhere strange. It was a big dead cornfield in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, but it wasn't cold. And there wasn't any snow or ice, and we were in summer clothing. She said something about going over to this desk we could see and signing up for a membership. There were 12-foot-high sunflower stalks about every 12 feet or so, and the stars were like flashlights through a blue to dark blue background. And I saw her talking to the guy behind the desk and behind some sort of register. that looked more like an adding machine. That slight pang of jealousy went through me in my dreaming, sleeping body. Between the stalks were big cages, and between them were dirt roads. On one, I saw an old car parked. I turned down that one. I was walking a dog that was my dog, but it wasn't the same breed as my dog. But it was also a car, but it wasn't my car, it was borrowed. Well, I decided to park the dog on that street before returning to her in the adding machine. I wanted to park the dog somewhere away from the old car, but not in front of any of the cages, which were also homes, much as my dog was a borrowed car. I decided the whole venture was hopeless and walked the car dog back to the adding machine. The guy behind the desk looked up and seemed startled, but not as startled as her. I looked at the member name printing out on the adding machine, and it was Cesar Cervantes. And in that instant, I became more jealous than I had ever been and switched to the next dream. In this one, she was wearing a blue and yellow soccer jersey and blue shorts and the whole cute little cleat get-up. And she was standing on a field. I must have been laying on my back because she seemed like she was very tall and the sun was behind her, making her head and upper body a silhouette. She was talking about losing her virginity, and she called the guy in question Cain. And she said she did him on the soccer field during an all-day tournament. Well, that was also the 60% beer day, she said. She moved and her head blocked out the glare of the sun, and I could then see her eyes, and they were blue. It's a ridiculous notion, 12-year-old traveling soccer players turning 60% of their bodily fluids into beer and having sex on the field, but still it was enough to wake me up and twang me out proper. I might be a raving insomniac, but when I do get sleep, man. So she was standing there in front of me with the ash streak on her temple, not burned or feeling pain, but still giving me a look. And I wanted to stick my index fingers in behind my eyes and pop them out, nerves hanging, and then feel around my chest blindly until I found a good place to finger out my heart and throw it in the woods to make amends as a real man, as real as I am, would. But the closest I got to getting my own was a cigarette gag, the kind that sort of tastes like seafood, makes your stomach implode and clench and your eyes water like the morning.